The rain poured down like 1,000 broken strings, washing the city in silver tears. Inside a small hospital room, the sound of the storm echoed faintly through the window, mingling with the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor. James stood still by the bedside. His hands trembled as he looked at the fragile figure lying before him. Deep's face was pale, her lips dry, her breathing shallow but steady. The white hospital sheets swallowed her small frame, making her look even more delicate, like a fragile porcelain figure caught between two worlds. Only hours earlier, she had collapsed at the market while helping a neighbor carry vegetables. The doctor had said it was exhaustion. Weeks of overwork, sleepless nights, and skipped meals had pushed her body to the brink. James could still remember the moment the phone rang. Tuan, his assistant, could barely speak. "Sir, it's Deep. She fainted. They've taken her to St. Mary's Hospital." The world had blurred. Meetings, contracts, investors, all of it vanished into noise as James ran out into the storm. Now, standing by her bed, the weight of guilt crushed him. He reached for her hand. It was cold, fragile, almost lifeless. "Why didn't you listen to me, Deep?" he whispered, though deep down he knew the question was really for himself. He had told her to rest, to stop worrying about him, but she had kept working, cooking, walking in the rain, waiting for him to come home from the company's endless chaos. The hospital lights cast a pale halo around her face. For a moment, she looked peaceful, too peaceful. James sank into the chair beside her, his eyes burning. Memories rushed through his mind. Deep waiting for him at home with a warm bowl of soup, her laughter echoing through the kitchen, her gentle hands pressing against his temples when stress had turned his thoughts into storms. He had once promised to give her everything, a home, a ring, a life without fear. Yet here she was, paying the price for his neglect. Outside, thunder rolled across the night like a wounded heart. He bowed his head and gripped her hand tighter. "Please wake up," he murmured, his voice cracking. "You can't leave me like this. I can't lose you, Deep." Tears fell silently onto her wrist. For the first time in years, the man who had built an empire felt utterly powerless. And somewhere deep within him, a vow began to form, quiet, solemn, unbreakable: the arrival. Hours passed. Rain softened to drizzle. The city outside the window was washed clean, fragile in the dawn light. James hadn't moved. The smell of disinfectant mingled with the faint scent of lilies placed at the nurse's desk. His eyes were red, heavy with exhaustion. Every sigh or twitch from Deep's body sent a surge of fear and hope through him. He was terrified, not of failure, not of ruin, but of waking up and finding her gone. Then came the sound of hurried footsteps. The door opened, and his mother, Mrs. Wynne, stepped in. Her gray scarf was still damp from the rain. She had traveled nearly 200 kilometers overnight. "James," she called softly, her voice trembling. He turned, startled. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I had to come," she said breathlessly. Her eyes found deep, lying so still, so pale. For a long moment, she said nothing. She simply stared, her chest rising and falling as her hands began to tremble. "This is her?" she whispered. "The girl who stood by you through everything?" James nodded, emotion tightening his throat. She's too kind, Mom. She always puts others first. I didn't see how much she was hurting." Mrs. Wynne walked to Deep's bedside and brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. "Poor child," she murmured. "She looks so fragile." Then she turned to her son, her voice steady but firm. "Go and rest. I'll stay with her." James shook his head. "I can't leave her." His mother studied him quietly. She saw the dark circles beneath his eyes, the tremor in his shoulders, the helplessness that had replaced his usual calm. Her expression softened. "You love her deeply, don't you?" He didn't hesitate. "More than anything." A faint, knowing smile touched her lips. "Then listen to me, James. Love isn't just about being near someone. It's about protecting them, even when they don't ask for it, even when it hurts." Her words struck something deep inside him. A mother's touch. Mrs. Wynne called for the head physician. Within minutes, a doctor arrived, reviewed the charts, adjusted the medication. James stood aside, watching as his mother gently held Deep's hand. "You've been strong for too long," she whispered. "Now let someone else be strong for you." James's chest tightened. He felt something shift inside him, a quiet recognition of what love truly meant. When his mother turned back to him, her eyes shone. "Promise me, James," she said softly. "Promise me you'll protect this girl, not just from the world, but from her own pain." He took a slow breath, his gaze steady. "I promise, Mom. I'll protect her for the rest of my life." Outside, the rain stopped. A thin ray of sunlight slipped through the window, falling gently across Deep's bed, a fragile blessing, a quiet beginning. The awakening. Morning. The storm had passed, leaving the world drenched in calm. The room was bathed in soft gold light when Deep stirred. Her fingers moved slightly beneath the blanket. James was at her side in an instant. Deep? Can you hear me? Her eyelids fluttered open. Her gaze was unfocused at first, then found him. James, she whispered weakly. He caught her hand and pressed it to his chest. I'm here, he said, his voice trembling with relief. You're safe now, she blinked, confused. Why are you crying? He hadn't realized he was. Mrs. Wynne moved closer, her smile warm and wet with tears. You scared us, my dear, she said gently. You've been through so much. When Deep recognized her, surprise flickered in her eyes. You came all the way here. A mother always comes when her child is in pain, Mrs. Wynne said softly. And you, Deep, are part of this family now. Tears welled in Deep's eyes. I don't deserve that kindness. Don't say that, James interrupted gently. You've done more for me than anyone ever could. You carried my burdens when I was too blind to see yours. You gave me love when I didn't deserve it. He turned to his mother. I'll protect her for the rest of my life. I promise. For a heartbeat, the room went still. Then Mrs. Wynne's eyes filled again. That's all I ever wanted to hear, she said softly. Deep's lips quivered. She tried to speak, but James placed a finger over her lips. Shish, he whispered. Just rest. Let me take care of you now. The heart monitor beat steadily, the rhythm of life, the rhythm of love. Mrs. Wynne stood quietly in the corner, watching them, the fragile girl her son loved, and the man he had become. Her tears fell once more, but they were not tears of fear this time, they were tears of peace. The morning after, 2 days later, the hospital smelled of jasmine and sunlight. Deep sat by the window, her cheeks no longer pale. She wore a soft sweater, her hair tied loosely behind her. James stood behind her, gently placing a shawl over her shoulders. Careful, he murmured. You're still weak. Just then, Mrs. Wynne entered with a small thermos. I made porridge, she said with a smile. Eat while it's warm. Deep looked up quickly. You shouldn't have bothered, Mom. A mother always bothers, she chuckled. That's her way of loving. She poured the porridge into a bowl and handed it to Deep. You've taken care of my son for so long. Now let us take care of you. Tears shimmered in Deep's eyes. Thank you, Mom. For everything. Mrs. Wynne placed a hand over hers. You've given James something I never could, peace. He used to live for work, chasing things that didn't last. But since you came, he's learned what truly matters. Her voice trembled, but her eyes were full of pride. You deserve to be happy, Deep. Don't ever doubt that again. James knelt beside them, taking Deep's hand. She's right, he said softly. Happiness isn't something you earn. It's something you choose. And I choose you, every day, for the rest of my life. Mrs. Wynne smiled through her tears. That's my son. Sunlight poured into the room, flooding it with gold. The shadows vanished, replaced by warmth and laughter. The farewell. When it was time to leave, James helped Deep into her wheelchair. I can walk, she protested gently. I know, he replied with a small smile. But I promised to protect you, didn't I? Mrs. Wynne laughed softly as she followed them down the corridor. And I'll hold you both to that promise. At the hospital gate, they paused. The breeze carried the scent of morning flowers. Mrs. Wynne placed a hand on both their shoulders. Go live your life, she said. Love deeply. Forgive easily. And never forget this moment. James nodded, his eyes glistening. We won't, Mom. As they walked toward the car, Deep looked back one last time. Mrs. Wynne stood there, waving, her eyes bright not with sadness, but with peace. James took Deep's hand in his, and she whispered through her tears. I believe you, James. I believe in us. Under the wide morning sky, they stepped forward, toward healing, toward hope, toward forever.